Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we have students here from UTSC. I only have information on one class. I need the information on the other class as well. Are there two classes or one class? Just one? All right. So these students from UTSC doing city studies and third year of city studies. In today's class, they're looking at, the class is Municipal and Planning Law. And the instructor is Mr. Kelly Snow. So thank you for coming down.
And Mr. sorry, Mr. Chair.
I, as today's chair, would like to get feedback from everyone as to what they think and how we can improve. Always looking for continuous improvement when we go through this kind of things. So you can see all the councillors here. There's normally 10 of us, but today 2 cannot make the meeting. Okay, a former, an alumni of UTSC wants to say something.
Yep.
Councillor DeBaymaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition, just to saying Scarborough Campus rocks, I did want to ask Judy if she could just stand and be recognized. Not only is she taking the course, but she's, I think councillors will recognize her as one of the staff that's been working my office for the last over 3 years now and does a fabulous job. So Judy, thank you very much for being wonderful, helping our constituents, and also maybe becoming a planner someday. Who knows? And I'd like to also to I wanted to call him Professor Snow, but he's an instructor and he's our staff member. Mr. Snow helped with our green development standards, which is part of our Transform Toronto initiative. Will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. And in that green development standard were the bird-friendly development guidelines, which help save millions of migratory birds from hitting windows on new condos and office towers that are being built. So, Mr. Snow, I just wanted to thank you as well, and thank you for teaching out at Scarborough Campus.
Thank you. So now we go into our meeting. And starting the agenda, I'd like to ask if anybody has any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of October 17, 2017? Councillor Cambridge-Janus, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. And we do have a number of speakers on the various items. So we go through the items and so that the councillors can hold any item or hold it for speakers. So item SC 26.1, request for fence exemption, 110 Lynnbrook Drive, fence in front yard. Councillor DeBaymaker.
There are speakers.
Oh, they're speakers, you're right. Hold in my name. SC 26.2, request for fence exemption, 109 Pitfield Road, front yard. Hold for speakers. SC 26.3, request for fence exemption, 4 Old Kingston Road. Councillor Hart.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to move recommendation 1 that the application be refused.
Okay. All those in favor of recommendation 1? Any opposed? Recorded vote? Okay. Recorded vote, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hart, Councillor Shan, Councillor Cambridge-Janus, Councillor Lee, Councillor Crawford, Councillor DeBaymaker. Any opposed? Councillor Ainsley. Recommendation 1 carried. Next item, SC 26.4, on-street permit parking, Pringdale Garden Circle. There are speakers, so hold for speakers. SC 26.5, 25 Glen Watford Drive, zoning amendment application and draft plan of subdivision, preliminary report. Okay, there are no speakers. Councillor Lee is going to make an amendment to the recommendation. Yes. I can speak on my residents' behalf. I am in order. Chair, okay? To you, Chair. All right. Yes. All right, the notification area will be expanded from the 120 meters to the within the boundaries, the red boundaries, which is on the west side, the CN rails or GO train tracks. The north side is Huntingwood. The east side is Brimley Road, and the south side is 401. So the notification area for the public meeting will be expanded to include all property owners and residents in this area. So, got a question?
Yes, sir.
Oh, if you got a question, then we got to hold it until.
No, I have a question of the motion.
Yes.
How far east and west, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
The what?
What's the eastern boundary, what's the western boundary for the notification area?
Brimley to the railway tracks,
Bromley,
to the GO train tracks,
okay, Huntingwood to
to 401. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Amendment carried. All those in favor of that item? Any opposed? Seeing none. Carried. Sorry, I dropped the speakers list. Next item, SC 26.6, application to remove a private tree, 42 Greypoint Drive. That's in Ward 42. There is a speaker on that, so I'll hold it in my name. SC 26.7, application to remove a private tree, 16 Alrita Crescent. Right. Recommendation. Okay. Staff recommendation move to deny the removal of tree. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Mr. Chair, just on previous item 6, the speaker can't please say is withdrawn, so you can withdraw.
Oh, withdrawn? Or the application has been withdrawn?
No, the speaker.
The speaker has been withdrawn.
Yeah, he's not the speaker.
Which one is that again?
Item 6, the great.
Item 6, okay. The clerk has just informed me that for the previous item, SC 26.6, application to remove a private tree, 42 Greypoint Drive, the speaker has decided not to speak, so I'll call on the Councillor Shen of Ward 42 to ask what he would like to do with the item.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to go to recorded vote so that I can vote in negative on this.
The what?
I would like to vote in negative on this. I would like to go to recorded vote.
You like to, I didn't quite get.
I'm not supporting the staff recommendation.
Oh, you're not supporting staff recommendation.
But
So-
I can let it go to vote, but I'll vote in negative.
Okay. So Councillor Debate-Maker is moving staff recommendation. Do we want a recorded vote? Okay, recorded vote. All those in favor of staff recommendation? Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hart, Councillor Lee, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Crawford, Councillor DeBaymaker. All those opposed, Councillor Shen, Councillor Karygiannis. So the staff recommendation carries to deny the removal of the tree. Next item, SC 26.8, impact of tree roots on sidewalk conditions and maintenance.
Sure.
Yes, Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I've been in communication with staff. This is something that I initiated back, and staff are looking for a 2 cycles. So I'd like to defer this for in the new year, first quarter.
Okay, so 2 cycles, which is February,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay? The February meeting of Scarborough Community Council. So motion to defer until February. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next item, SC 26.9, left turn prohibition, Victoria Park Avenue at Terraview Boulevard. We have speakers on this, so I'll hold it. SC 2610, traffic operations review, Twin Rivers Drive.
Mr. Chair,
Actually, this item has no speakers, but although Councillor DeBaymaker was the one that brought it forward, it's really in the wards of Councillor Hart and Councillor Shen.
I'll let Councillor DeBaremaker speak to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was able to discuss this matter with the local councillors, and we've agreed to defer this item to the second meeting of 2019. We felt that, given that Councillor Hart...
February then, the same
February,
February
yes,
of
okay.
2019.
Given that Councillor Hart is an interim councillor, we thought let the election come and
Okay.
let the elected representatives be here, and then
All those in favor?
19 or 28, sorry,
Oh, 2019.
19.
Oh, after the next
Yes,
election.
nothing personal against Councillor Hart, but we thought let the next councillor make that decision.
Yes, that's true, because the Durham, there was a letter from the Durham planners suggesting that it be included in the master plan, right? So all those in favor of moving to the second
February of-
full meeting, right? Because the first meeting is like a chair. So I would suggest the third meeting then,
Okay,
okay?
sure.
Of, no, February, because the first meeting is December.
no meeting in January.
There's meeting in January. Okay, February then, yeah, February of 2019 then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Nothing personal, Councillor Hart. It's just,
Love for him to run.
Next item, SC 2610, traffic operations review. Oh, sorry, we handled that. My error, deferred. Next item, SC 2611, accessible loading zone, 2384 Kingston Road. No speakers, Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I'd just like to move staff recommendations.
Staff recommends remove. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next item, SC 2612, standing prohibition, Lakeside Avenue, Ward 36, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
Staff recommends remove. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. SC 2613, stop prohibition, Borough Drive. No speakers. Councillor DeBaymaker.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just move staff recommendations.
Staff recommends remove. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. SC 2614, parking prohibitions, then Borough Way, Brookmill Boulevard, and Lamoureux Drive. There are speakers on this, so I'll hold in my name. 14, yes. Parking prohibition, close to the hospital. SC 2615, School Zone Safety Review, Glendower Circuit. Councillor Gary Janus, no speakers on it.
Chair, I would like to move staff recommendations. I want to thank the staff for working with us in order to make sure that the school zone is safe.
Okay. All those in favor of staff recommendation? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. SC 2616, Traffic Control Signals Review, Steeles Avenue East and Mountcastle Gate. There are no speakers, so Councillor Kerry-Janis.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank staff for their work over the years on this item. There's 3 subdivisions that I have on the north side between Victoria Park and Kennedy, a subdivision between Pharmacy and Warden, subdivision between Warden and Birchmount, and subdivision between Warden and Kennedy. Both the 2 exterior subdivisions, the one between Pharmacy and Warden and the one between Birchmount and Kennedy, have lights going on to Steeles. This is the only subdivision that it doesn't have, and I would like to move the alternate recommendation. If despite the findings above, the Scarborough Council determined that a traffic signal will be, you may approve the following. City Council authorize the installation of traffic control signals at the intersection of Steeles Avenue East and Mount Castle Gate. 2, City Council rescind the existing northbound left turn prohibition in effect from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., from 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. There is a bus route that goes through there, and buses do exit at Mount Castle Gate. So I'd appreciate your support, please, in order for us to put a traffic light.
Does he have a motion up? I don't think there's a quick item, so I think I'm going to hold it until later. Does anybody have any questions of this? No?
Okay, so
All right.
you have
So we put it a vote then? Okay, because I do have to question staff, okay? So I think I'll hold it. Lane designation. No, SC 2617, lane designation, Steeles Avenue East at East Vale Drive. Ward 42, Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the staff recommendation by just stating that, this particular move will make Steeles Avenue, which is increasingly becoming heavy traffic and unsafe, more safer, and will designate a particular lane for moving west and northwards.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll move staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation move. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. SC 2618, lane designation, Kingston Road at Gilwood Parkway. Councillor Ainsley.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Staff recommendation move. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. SC 2619, left turn prohibition, 61 Canmore Boulevard. There is a speaker on it, so I'll hold it in my name. SC 2620, endorsement of events for liquor license purposes. There is a speaker on this, so I'll hold it in my name. So at this time, I'd like to see whether anybody has any petitions present. No?
Sorry,
So
Mr.
now we
Chair.
go back to the first item.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do have an announcement I'd just like to make. With your, I have an announcement I'd like to
You have
make with your
an announcement?
indulgence,
Okay.
more of an information item. So the Thompson Family Bible, which has been in the lobby of the Scarborough Civic Center since 1970, the Thompson Family Bible, it's the Bible of one of the the founding families of Scarborough. A couple of years ago, I noticed it was tucked away under a display case. I brought it to the attention of our collections and culture services. They've taken the Bible. One of the beautiful things about this building is the amount of sunlight that comes into the lobby. Unfortunately, it was in an airtight case. that was curling the edges of the pages. The Collection and Culture Services has decided that the damage that was done to the Bible, it can no longer be kept in the lobby. It's now going to be kept in a special collection case. You're going to be able to see it by appointment only. The pages, the center of the Bible, the light damage, a lot of the two center pages can't be read. The collection service is looking at digitizing it. I also brought them the same thing. So the Hand of God statue has a similar book, and it was similar damage. The collection services is reviewing that as well. And the other bit of good news, they've also gone out on the square of the Civic Center, and they polished all of the Albert Campbell Square plaques, which were becoming very tarnished as well. So I just want to bring that to everybody's attention if you're asked where the Thompson Family Bible's gone.
Thank you very much. Anybody else has any announcements? Well, I do have a short little one. Hanging in the lobby of the atrium, there is a piece of artwork that was done by the children that came to the community barbecue, Ward 41 community barbecue that was hosted by five community associations in Ward 41. So it's a nice piece of artwork. It's going to hang in the lobby until the end of the month. And we're going to have a little bit celebration at lunchtime, so everybody's invited to come out to some refreshments, and so everybody's welcome. Okay, now we go back to the agenda. Item SC 26.1, request for fence exemption, 110 Lynnbrook Drive, fence in front yard. And the speaker we have is two speakers. First one is Bonnie Jenkins. Can Bonnie Jenkins come forward, please? And Mr. Jenkins, you have 5 minutes to address the councillors. Yeah, you can the clerk, do you want to put up the, yeah. Thank you, Scott. And you have 5 minutes to make your deputation, and then after that, the councillors will have the opportunity to ask you questions for clarification. Thank you. Please proceed.
Those of you that were here last time have already seen these pictures. I'd like to be able to look out my front window. I can't look out because of this hedge. It's over 10 foot tall. It's untidy. We try to keep our side nice and neat. We tried to trim the top, and we were asked not to. And you can see how high it is on the one side because we had started to trim it, and we were asked to stop, so we stopped. It just looks very untidy. I don't want to get rid of it. I just want the bylaw enforced and it being maintained, and us be able to maintain it. It's over 10 foot tall, and my husband's already fallen off the ladder once trying to trim it to that height. We are both seniors, and we don't need to go up on ladders that high. It's not conforming to the neighborhood. There's not another hedge on the Lynnbrook Drive that height. It looks shabby, and it brings our property values down. It also encroaches a foot onto our property line. Where's the one that had the property line? Oh, I don't know where it went. Oh, okay. It does come onto our property line, and we try to keep it neat on our side. That's the property line where that post is going through. I hope that the bylaw for the front lawn property can be enforced and is done so this fall while the hedge is dormant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you very much. You may take your seat. And the next deputant is Savi Rajalingam. Savi Rajalingam? Oh, okay. Yep. You have photos to show as well?
The guy calls me and he's like, help me, it's a private property matter. I'm like,
Yeah, please come to the podium in front, and you have 5 minutes. Yes, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and then after that, the councillors will have opportunity to ask you questions or clarification. So please proceed.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Good morning, councillors, chair, and thank you for having me here again. Okay, those 3 pictures, the lower one was taken when I bought the property 13 years ago. Behind there, you see the hedge to my left, where my little girl is standing. That's my hedge. Where my older one's standing, that's my neighbor's hedge, which has been standing 10 feet tall up until a month ago, just before the last meeting here. And right now, the hedge is at about 7 feet tall at the very tall point. And the tree measuring at the trunk, it's about 22 inches. And my reasons for wanting to keep this hedge is that these are older trees which were planted over 25 years ago. And I've bought the property like that, with these trees being much taller. And trees, it's green in winter, it gives me privacy. I am a nature lover. That bird bath there, I've replaced that bird bath with a tree, a cherry blossom, but I still kept that bird bath beside the hedge, because I know there are lots of birds' nests in there. And if we were to enforce the bylaw and cut down those 3 to 4 feet, the trees will die. And I don't see how good that would be for our green environment. And, for some reason, looking at these green trees in the winter keeps me calm. I don't think they should be cut down to 4 feet. It will die. And I have, this council meeting has given exemptions for hedges, existing hedges. Last year, October 13th of 2016, the top corner of that, where I've taken the picture from within my car, that's from 29 Macduff Crescent. It's in Ward 36. There was an exemption given for that hedge. That was about 12 feet tall, and somebody complained, and the owner said if it had to be cut down, it'll die. And I have all the councillors who voted against cutting that hedge down, so it still stands. I took that picture over the weekend, and my councillor, Mr. de Beermaker, has given exemptions to wooden fences being built on corner lots in the last meeting, October 17th, one of them being 253 Bellamy Road North, where Farmbrook meets Bellamy Road. It's a corner lot, and there's a fence being built which is about 6 feet tall right now as we speak. Yes, that's the one. And the picture on the top there with the corner lot and the fence, that's number 4, Benair Crescent. That's also in the Ben Jungle. That exemption was given, again, I believe it's, no, sorry, that's Benari Crescent, October 13, 2016. Since I bought the property, I have been planting trees. And if the councillors want to see, I have receipts for over a couple of $1,000s since 2009. or going back 2007. I bought the property in 2005. So I'm asking, I'm pleading with my counselor, please, let me keep this hedge. And I don't think why anybody should oppose having to look at green hedges outside your window, as opposed to having look at concrete and asphalt and buildings. I don't see, people have different tastes, but I prefer to keep my trees. I bought that property like that, and my neighbor vandalized 2 of the trees that made up the hedge in 2015. She cut it down to 3 feet, where I had to dig the roots up and replace with 4 new trees. It's on the other side. You can't see at the top picture. Maybe you could see a little bit of it. And I looked the other way because I didn't want to start anything with the neighbors. Please, let me keep these trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Yes, Councillor Shen?
So how tall was the trees or the hedge when you bought it?
It was about 12 feet tall.
And how tall are they now?
They're down to 7 feet because my neighbor every year keeps cutting them down. One day I came back from work back in 2007, and the hedge was shorter by about 3 feet. And her reason for that was being, okay, we need to trim it down so I can look out my window. And I asked her not to trim it, not to bring the height down any further. I said, Bonnie, you can trim it on your side if you want to, but I would like to keep the height there because my, it protects my property from all the wind and my other trees from the wind damage. It provides, it keeps, I don't know, for some reason, I think it keeps my house cooler in the summer. I keep planting trees around the house, not for these ones to be cut down. They're so old. I just like to look at them. So anyways, right now, the hedge is standing at about 6.5 feet at the tallest point. I have pictures from within my neighborhood where there are hedges standing on corner properties, driveways, ranging anywhere from 6 feet to 10, 12 feet. And there's no 2.4 meter clearance between the sidewalk and the property and the hedge, or between the hedges and the driveways. And with mine, we have no driveway on either side of the property. It's just our yards. My driveway is on the opposite side, so is Bonnie's is on the opposite side. So having to cut these down for somebody's viewing pleasure, because they don't want to see the trees, they want to see out the window.
The hedge is right now shared between the two.
Pardon me?
Is the hedge right now shared between the two properties?
It's on my property, and they just keep cutting it down every year. This year, after 12 years, I put my foot down and said, no, you have to stop doing that. And that's when this complaint was made to the city. I should have done it 3 years ago when she cut down 2 of my trees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Question of staff? Anybody question of staff? No? All right, so Councillor Backmaker, it's your call now.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I'm going to move recommendation 1 of the staff report, which is to refuse to grant the application for the exemption permit, which means that the hedge, which is not on the screen now, I don't know if they have the original photographs that were up there, but that the hedge will have to come down to the specific height that the bylaw requires. As we know, councillors, because I'm looking around the chamber, we've all been active in municipal politics for quite a while. We set as a community council a standard of bylaws for the 620,000 people who live in Scarborough. We tell you, for example, where you can park on your lawn. You're not allowed to park anywhere on your lawn that you want. You can't park in front of your living room window. You've got to park on your driveway. We actually tell you how big your house can be. If you want a really giant house, you can't build a really giant house unless you get an exemption or a committee of adjustment. We actually tell you how high your house can be. You can sometimes build a 2nd story, but you can't build a 3rd or 4th or even 5th story and turn it into an apartment building. We actually tell you what uses you're allowed in your house. You can have a residential building. You can run some small component, sometimes 20% of the floor area for businesses, but you cannot convert a house into, say, a travel agency or a hair salon. So looking at these standards, we do make exemptions, and the resident actually mentioned 2 in my ward that I can speak to. Both of those are on corner lots, and we know the, I'll call it the complexities, because we've all dealt with them, of corner lots, where people sort of look out and say, well, that's my front yard, and we say, well, no, according to the bylaw, it's not your front yard, it's your side yard, and we sometimes have to grant exemptions. There are other exemptions where, for example, if your neighbor's property is 4 feet or 6 feet taller, higher ground than your property, maybe there's a reason for an exemption. If there's a bus stop by your front property, so that maybe the kids going to the bus stop throw pop bottles onto your lawn, maybe there's an exemption. So we grant exemptions if there's a reason or a circumstance that says this should be different than everybody else's. I was able to visit both owners with the property standards inspector, and the inspector could not see any reason to grant an exemption. And so I, as a local councillor, said to both homeowners that unfortunately I cannot give an exemption when there's no rationale to give an exemption. I understand the one homeowner appreciates the extra privacy that the taller hedges provide her and her family, the beauty of them. I agree with all that. Unfortunately, we have a bylaw that all of us have to live by, and that is a height on your front yard of 4 feet. And I have great sympathy for the owner who purchased a house, I think it was about 13 years ago, and the hedge was higher than 4 feet. But the hedge regulation is 4 feet, and now that there's been a complaint, and again, I can't find, as a local councillor, and our professional staff couldn't find any grounds to grant an exemption, I'm just simply going to move the staff report. Oh, sorry, refuse the grant exemption.
Okay, the motion is moved to refuse the application. All those in favor of this motion? All those opposed? Carried. So, unfortunately, councillors have decided not to allow your application for exception to the rules. You can return to your seat, please. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
Next item, SC 26.2, request for fence exemption, 109 Pitfield Road, front yard. Mr. Castleman. Please come to the podium. You have 5 minutes to present, and then the councillors will have opportunity to ask you questions for clarification.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Castleman, and I reside at 66 Keyworth Trail in the C.D. Farquharson area, where the property in discussion is located. I'm a long-standing member of the 45-year-old Community Association and responsible for area development and membership. Our president is working today and unable to attend, so I speak to you on behalf of our association. We object to the variance due to the fact that a somewhat similar fence variance was asked for a few years ago from the owner at 15 Fulham, which is around the corner. This council made a decision to allow the fence, but to remove the gates that were presently there. The owner at 15 Fulham has come to our community association and asked why this fence and these gates are permissible if his wasn't. The fact is, the owners at 109 Pitfield have installed a front yard 5¼ wrought iron fence and planted a 5-foot cedar hedge running parallel to Pitfield. The fence is 3 feet from the sidewalk, and the 7-foot high gates are supported by brick columns, which make it difficult to see sideways, either looking out to the street from a car
exiting the premises, or impossible to see a car looking in if you are a child on a sidewalk coming or going to the local public school. The fence on Fulham was set back from the street, and there is no sidewalk on Fulham. The fence on Pitfield contravenes City of Toronto Bylaw 793/2000, which states under open fence construction, I quote, "The fence construction shall provide motorists and pedestrians with an unobstructed view of people, vehicles, and their movements through the entire length of the fence," end quote. It's important to note that the C.D. Farquharson Public School is located near the corner of Pitfield and Brimley, and 109 Pitfield, the residence in question, is the fourth house from the same intersection, a distance of 79 yards or 73 meters, whichever you're more comfortable with. The foot traffic going and coming from the school is substantial. If there was only a wrought iron fence, one could look in or out of the property, but unfortunately, the 16 cedars that were planted on the inside of the fence are side by side and are now blocking the view of a small child walking or possibly running on the sidewalk. On the south side of Pitfield, where 109 is located, there are 11 homes between Brimley and the first street to the west, which is McDermott. And there are no solid fences in the front yards, but there are 3 hedges. These hedges have been kept to a 4-foot height, which is the legal requirement. It's the recommendation of the C.D. Farquharson Community Association that the gates, columns, and the front hedge be removed, but that the wrought iron fence be allowed to remain. We feel this will help remove the possibility of a possible accident and will negate the gated community impression. We also would like the council to impress upon the owners at this home that the cedar trees on the east and west sides of the front yard be maintained at a 4-foot height, and suggest that the front hedge could be replanted on the east and west sides of the front of the yard, but at least 6 feet away from the sidewalk to make sure the sight lines are clear. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? I do.
Yeah.
Mr. Castleman, you had said earlier that 15 Fulham. So if the conditions imposed on 15 Fulham are imposed on this property, is that acceptable to the community and the community association?
It was acceptable. The gates in that particular home were removed, but they were 8 feet tall, even though the fence was gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous. And this fence is also really, really nice.
Okay.
That's
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you.
I don't think I've questioned the staff because I've had discussions with them before. I'm going to move a motion, and this is to allow, as I said earlier, when I asked Mr. Castleman whether if we impose the same conditions, mitigate the issues that he brought forward, and that is to grant the application for the existing wrought iron fence on the condition that the gates be removed and the hedges are maintained at below 4 feet for visibility through the hedges. Direct and require that the installation be maintained in good repair without alterations. Direct and require that the installation be maintained in good repair without alteration. Direct and require that at such time as replacement of the fence required, that such installation will comply with Municipal Code Chapter 447 or its successor bylaw. As was pointed out by Mr. Castleman, the previous council in the last term decided to allow a close-by fence because it was gorgeous, as he said. And since we set a precedent, we cannot just say that we allowed that one but not allow this one. So that is why by ensuring they comply to the same conditions that was allowed in the last one, that this fence exemption be granted under all these conditions. So I hope that you support this. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next item. SC 26.4. On-street permit parking, Pringdale Garden Circle. Speakers. The first speaker is El Lama Boyan. El Lama Boyan, are you here? Yes, please come down to the front.
And Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if you could read out the next speakers, so I get a sense, say maybe at the back row, that maybe they could come down and.
Okay, if all the speakers would come down closer to the front, it will help speed the meeting up. The next speaker is Gunaratnam Nadaraja. You can come down. And the next speaker is Rizal Karim. So, and Mr. Boyan, you have 5 minutes to address the councillors and chambers, and we will then have the opportunity to ask you questions. So, whenever you're ready, you can begin. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable councillors and residents of Pringdale Garden Circle community. We are new community of 86 families. That is 86 and all together 300 people standing, my son, daughter, everybody. On the 21st June 2017, our honorable councillor Glen had visited our community in order to see and resolve the following issues. Free parking zone of Pringdale Garden Circle. Relocate sidewalk along the curved road. We understand that Mr. Glen has taken a number of steps to resolve our issues. As part of these processes, we are gathered here in support of street permit parking for the homeowners who live in Pringdale Garden Circle. We also understand that residents would have to pay about $17 per month to park one car on the road and about $40 to park with a second car on the road. As it is a new and fully residential circle, we would strongly recommend an exception and allow us free parking for at least one car park household. As you all know, we have a unique situation on one street at Pringdale that has recently been constructed. Some residents on this street had discovered that they are unable to legally park vehicles on their driveway due to very short driveway lengths and placement of city sidewalk.
The one right across.
We thank you again for your visit and action taken to resolve our community issues and hope that we will have an street permit parking soon without paying fees. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Maker.
Hi, thank you through you, Mr. Chair, and I will not ask everyone who comes and speaks the same question, but I want maybe my colleagues on council to understand, what's your actual address?
My address is 1313 Danforth Road.
And when you park your car, you have to park your car off of Pringdale Gardens.
Yes,
And if you actually park on your driveway, will you get a ticket?
yeah,
Yes, so it's actually, for a number of circumstances, which I'll go into later when it's my turn to speak, if you park on your driveway, you will get a ticket. And same goes for your neighbors along that stretch. Any of them who come home after work and park in their driveway, they'll get a ticket.
yes,
And that's partly because the way we built the sidewalk is really, really close to your foundation.
yes,
For just you specifically, for your family, from the edge of your foundation of your garage, from the wall of your garage to the sidewalk, how many feet away is that, separating the sidewalk from your house?
2.5 feet.
2.5 feet.
Yes,
So if you park on your driveway, you are parking over the sidewalk.
yes,
And you'd be blocking, say me, if I'm taking my kids to school, I would have to then go around your car.
yes.
So the only option you have is you do have a garage.
I have a garage.
So if you park in your garage, then you won't get a ticket, correct?
Yes,
But then when you back your car up, can you actually see the people walking past your house on the sidewalk?
very risky, very, 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 very risky. Anytime any accident, any side.
Okay, so it's sort of a blind spot. You physically can't see people when you're driving out of your garage because the sidewalk was built so close to your foundation.
Yes,
If it was 6 feet away like other people's properties, you'd probably be okay. But, unfortunately, you physically can't park on your driveway without violating our bylaw.
yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maymaker. Any further questions? Seeing none, I ask for the next speaker to be, you can take your seat, Mr. Wayan. You can take a seat. The next speaker is Mr. Gunaratnam Nadaraja. Yeah, if you come down to, all the speakers, when you come down to sit at the front, it'll be faster. Mr. Rizwal Kareem, can you please come down and sit at the front? Yeah, can you just take a seat over there so that, yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Nadaraja, you have 5 minutes to address the chambers, and after that, the councillors would have opportunity to ask you questions for clarification. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, all the city councillor. Same problem we have, all the residents, the parking permit problems. So, couple months ago, I got the ticket on my parking spot, $150. So I put in the court, but I have the notice I received the notice from the court. But all the residents have same problem, so I don't want to talk anything extra.
Staff say yes.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just,
Councillor Debate Maker, yes.
through Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I missed it. What's your family's address?
1327 Danforth Road, 1327.
So your family is the same. If you come home after work and park your car?
Yeah, I have 2 vehicles, so I can park my van inside. I put the car outside. Just on Victoria Day, I park my van outside, so they put the ticket. Within
Right.
half an hour, I put the $150.
And are you aware we've tried to work with the police not to give you a ticket for parking on your driveway, but they tell us they have to enforce the law?
Yeah.
So you keep getting tickets?
Yeah.
In theory, you would get it if in the next 365 days, then in the next year, if a police officer came to your house every day, you would get a ticket every day for 365 days.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. That's great, thank you.
Are you finished with
Oh,
your
sorry, yes,
question?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nadaraja. Next speaker is Mr. Razul Karim. You have 5 minutes to address the chambers, and then after that, councillors will have opportunity.
Honorable City Councillor. So we have the same issue in Pringdale Garden Crescent area, resident of this area, those same problems. So we do get the always ticket, and there is the, sidewalk. It is very risky for any kids, because you cannot see anything if you go outside from the garage. So we would like to request you that you give us the opportunity to park in the street side, and if maybe we don't mind if you the pay parking, even the monthly system. So we want to request you to allow us to the parking, free parking, or even a little pay parking monthly. Thank you very much.
Councillor Debate-Maker?
No questions.
You have any questions? Okay, I do have a question. Is this a new development, that subdivision, right? So you do have a single parking garage,
inside.
and then your driveway can park 1 car?
No, we cannot.
Or there's no ability to park any cars on the driveway?
None.
Okay, so just 1 spot in your garage. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Glenn?
Next speaker is Ms. Aniswa Rahman. Yes, please, you have 5 minutes to address the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable councillors, good morning, everyone. Good morning, my people in my residential area. I'm from 1329 Danforth Road, Pringdale Garden Circle. We are talking about the same issue. Thanks, Mr. Bearmaker, to give us a chance to move this item put forward and resolve this parking issue. He visited last June in our area. He personally saw that the problem with the parking, because the way the developer made the walkway in front of the garage is so close to the garage, and we cannot park 1 car, and we cannot move behind, we cannot put our way back to the garage, and it is so difficult. That's why we asked for a free parking facility in that area. It's a newly built construction, newly built area, and there's a lot of houses, and we face so many difficulties in parking. We cannot park our car for our visitors, and also when we park in our driveway, we get the ticket every day, so it is so difficult. So I would recommend, I will request that we please allow us a free parking in that area, at least 1 car per household. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Debate-Maker, no questions? Councillor Karagianis, go ahead.
How old is the subdivision, sir? When did you move there?
It's about 2 years.
Were you the original owner?
Yeah.
Was there anything when you bought the house, in the clause of you buying the house, making you aware that this would exist?
Yeah, they said that there will be a walkway, but not near to, we thought that this not near to our garage, but near to the road, right? It should be on the roadside.
So, if I'm looking at that map,
Yeah,
you have ability not to park, the sidewalk is very close to your house.
yeah, right.
So if the sidewalk was farther down, you would have the ability to park.
Yeah, it should be near to the roadside, not to the garage side.
So, did the builder, when you buy the house,
Yeah.
was there a clause in the purchase advising you of this?
I can't remember, but No clause, right? No clause, yeah.
So was the house bought, so did you buy the house before it was built or after it was built?
Before, yeah.
Okay, so it's the builder's fault for not having come on the side. Okay, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
No problem, thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Niall Paudel. Neil Paudel. Neil or Niall Paudel. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. N-I-L. Okay, doesn't look like Neil Paudel is here. So now we bring it to any questions of staff. Yes, Councillor Shan and Councillor Gavianis later.
Just in terms of whoever is able to answer from the planning side, how this particular plan got approved the way it is, or if it was already known to us that this was just a one garage parking proposal with no parking around.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with this development, but we're looking up the old report, so perhaps in a few more minutes I'll have a little more information. Typically, we provide for a setback to accommodate a vehicle between the front wall of a dwelling and the private property line. It's been reduced over the years to somewhere in the range of 5.7 meters, so this is an unusual situation, but legally it meets the requirements of providing parking on site in an integrated garage. But I'll have a little more information in a few minutes, perhaps.
Thank you. Maybe while that is happening, in terms of this type of model of allowing permit parking in Scarborough, I'm just curious in terms of how often are we able to have we've done this before, and if there are models for us in Scarborough, particularly Scarborough Centre, as it becomes very, very concentrated in development. So do we have similar models of what's being requested in other parts of Scarborough or Scarborough Centre?
We have certain sections of Scarborough, well, most of Scarborough, with respect to the permanent parking program, most of Scarborough is not included within the scope of this program. There are some excluded areas, some pockets in Ward 35 and 36. The program is in place everywhere else in the city, mostly everywhere else in the city. But the way it stands in Scarborough, only certain pockets.
Thank you.
So, but from a development perspective, this isn't something that we would normally have other applications that are replicating something of this nature. We would, as Paul was saying, ask for at least 5.7 meters between the main front wall of the house and the property line.
Thank you.
Councillor Kajianis?
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to understand the map. Is it only a few houses that don't have the parking? I mean, we're only seeing I believe that with the west side. Is the southern part of is there any different? So so this does not affect the required change. It affects, I guess, people on the outside, would that be correct? And it does not affect the people on the inside? Because there's no sidewalk on the inner circle of the circuit? Let me put my time on hold. Would that be correct, Councillor? I mean, you know the area.
It's the two ends.
So it's not the north part. The north part is okay?
North part is okay, you can fit one car in your driveway, you can park one car.
So we're looking at the east and the west end.
It's a little different at the east end, but yes.
So is the request that we make the whole street, we give permit to the whole street, or is the request that we give permits parking to the two ends?
The request is for the whole street.
Is there something in our arsenal of bylaws and everything else that would allow us to make an exception so there's street parking allowed with no time limit for 3 hours? Could that be done?
So typical parking regulations unsigned for 3 hours is,
Right, but those are typical.
that's typical.
Is there a means that we can allow this street, we can remove that 3-hour exemption, allow them to park on the street without them having to run so often to get parking permits?
A longer parking bylaw would have to be reviewed and put into place with a regulation with a sign, because otherwise, if it's unsigned, it means 3 hours.
Okay.
I think your best routine to go with this is through permit parking.
But there is something in your arsenal, in your preview, that will allow this street to park and remove the signs and to allow them to park for more than 3 hours.
The difference between going with permit parking and unregulated parking, just allowing, say, 12-hour parking or whatever we're talking about, is that anyone can park in that 12-hour parking, whereas only a person with a permit can park in a permit parking area.
I mean, looking
A resident.
Looking at a bigger map, the only people that would have business of parking in there would be the people that live in that garden circle. This is not an area, and I could stand to be corrected, that is, there are a lot of work people that, or an area where people will park in order to get on the bus route or anything like that. I don't think anybody else that has no business being on that street will be parking on the street. So I'm just wondering if we can find something in your arsenal that maybe people do not have to get parking permits, and there'll be another cost to them, and signage cost to you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the councillor wants to defer it for a cycle and to ask you to do this and, come back with, because, certainly, the people would appreciate something like that versus having to, every couple of months, to pay for parking permits and apply for parking permits. And is that possible?
Council is able to make whichever decision they choose. The option in
Wanna go
front
with
of
the
you
parking
is for on-street parking currently.
Would, and again, I'm going to ask this, would allowing permit parking for, let's say, for 6 months until you come back with something like that, would that be something that would be amenable for you? Is that something that you can look at?
Yeah, permit parking can be rescinded if it gets implemented.
So we can actually, ask you to take a look that, the street has exemption from getting tickets, like the 3-hour bylaw, until this is fixed. And once you find that this is possible, then you can come back to us in 6 months and have the parking permit rescinded.
So your question was just to me, whether or not we could instate permit parking today
Yes.
and then rescind it later. Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Right, but in the meantime, can you look at your arsenal to find out if we can remove that 3-hour bylaw that's required and allow them to park?
So, yes, we can investigate
All right,
that.
thank you.
Next is Councillor Kelly.
Does the Scarborough Community Council have delegated authority in this matter?
Well, Scarborough Community Council would need to go to City Council.
And we do not have the authority.
We do not, no.
All we can do in this instance is recommend to City Council.
Correct.
How much will we charge for parking permits?
Parking permits are, so parking permits run on 6-month terms, and we're looking at $15.44 per month.
How much is that?
A 6-month term is $92, and a 1-year term is $185.
So if in the end, City Council decides to introduce permit parking in that area by way of putting it taking it out of the excluded area. If, as Councillor Karejanis has pointed out, not all the residents of that street are affected by the short parking distance on their personal driveways, then the people of that street could make up their own minds whether they need the permit parking, and if they don't, they don't. So you could have theoretically only the people that are affected and appearing before us who would take advantage of that, and the others not. So you don't necessarily have to go to a more generalized approach that permits parking at all times on the street.
The way the permit parking works is that it's an overnight program, so the typical hours are midnight to 7 a.m. So what that does is it allows the street to basically remain the same during the day. You can have guests and visitors come and park on the road, but when it comes to long-term parking, with permit parking, you need to prove residency. We will be providing permits to residents. Once they have the permits, they would be exempt from the daytime 3-hour maximum parking duration. So they would be allowed to park there for longer periods of time.
So permit parking basically is overnight parking.
It's overnight parking with the perk of being able to park there during the day without running the risk of being tagged for parking more than the 3-hour daytime limit.
Say that last part again. If you have permit parking for overnight parking, you also have the ability to park longer than 3 hours on that particular location for that permit. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it actually addresses two issues, overnight and daytime as well.
Correct.
Are you, with respect to sort of granting freedom from the bylaw for the entire street, are you aware of this occurring anywhere in the city?
Yes, we have another situation with a development much larger than this in North York. North York, similar to Scarborough, there's a large area that is exempted from this program, and this development has a large number of garages for many of the units that are substandard. Vehicles actually can't fit in the garages. So what's happened there is the exemption was lifted for that particular area of the city to allow the residents of the development to petition the city to allow permit parking to be implemented. Again, it allows for the petition process, and it allows us to receive the petition and actually conduct a formal poll, and we're basically looking at the majority of the residents. Are they in favor of the proposal, yes or no?
Was that a condition that existed before amalgamation? Or did it?
The residential permit parking program existed before amalgamation in various former cities, former Toronto.
So that really was a North York exemption, and it was grandfathered? We're talking about the North York development.
It is a new development, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just in take your time. Councillor Crawford, next question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at the map there. We're going to be granting permission for the entire street to put permit parking, but I'm looking at the map, realizing that you may not be able to put permit parking on the entire street. So what sort of assessment do you go through to determine how many spots would be available on this street?
So what we do is we survey this street. We say an average parking spot is 5.5 meters. So we do our survey, and if you notice in the photograph there's a lot of driveways. There's a lot of curb cuts. So there aren't that many parking spaces in between those curb cuts. The bulk of the parking spaces are actually in the east-west leg of the street, the bottom portion of the street.
So on the bottom portion, you probably would be looking at, I don't know, however many. looks to be maybe 20, maybe you could fit on that height, quite a few actually on there. Now, understanding that the issue is dealing with only a few of, and most of the residents were here that don't have parking, but are you going to be just recommending parking spots just for the ones who don't have access, or are you going to be doing what's actually possible on the street?
What's possible is to basically permit permit parking or allow permit parking to any of the residents on the entire street, those that would need it. They wouldn't be guaranteed a spot in front of their home, they'd be guaranteed a spot somewhere on that street. In other words, we wouldn't issue more permits than there are parking spaces, and we would ensure that the permits are issued to residents and not non-residents. These are the long-term 6-month permits. And then if residents have visitors, they have guests that are staying overnight for a few days, the weekend, then they would be permitted to apply for temporary parking permits. We have 1-day permits, 2-day permits, and 1-week permits. So basically for residents and their visitors.
So, and just go over the assessment process. So you have 20 spots that are there. It looks like there's like 50 or 60 homes. What sort of assessment do you go through? And some of them have the opportunity to park 2 cars, some just 1, excluding the garage, of course. So there's 2 cars I can see, there's 1 car, and of course there's 1 section there's no. So what sort of assessment do you go through when they apply to get one?
Yes, what we do is we actually survey each and every property to determine what parking exists on site. So when a resident comes to us for a parking permit, we'll know exactly what's the existing parking. So if you have, for example, an indoor parking space, and you're in one of the properties that have these short substandard driveways, we'll have that noted. And if you say, I have 2 vehicles, we'll ask you for the license plate number of the vehicle parked on the property. We verify that it's under your name, it's registered at that address, and that you're parking it on the property, and that allows us to issue you the permit to park your second vehicle on the street.
Okay, and so when I'm looking at those houses on the bottom portion, you have 2 cars that you can actually park in the driveway, plus the garage, that's 3. Good chance, and you may say, well, we have 4 cars, but there's probably a good chance that you will be down at the bottom of the list to be able to get a permit, because you have the option to put in 3 cars where on the one other side you don't have any option, so you'll actually assess, and again, depending on the amount of spaces you have, that there's some houses just probably will not be able to get a permit parking, is that correct?
Well, what happens is we sell permits on a first-come, first-served basis. So there are those that have multiple parking spaces on the property and they're accessible. We know it, but they say, well, yes, I have an indoor space and an outdoor space, but I have a 3rd vehicle. My teenage son has a car, so we'll allow that vehicle to be parked on the street. It's only when all the parking spaces are purchased, all the permits are sold, and we have people waiting for a parking space, then what happens is we actually start looking at folks that have parking and they're actually not using the parking on site, but they have a parking permit.
And just
we'll start
quick,
canceling permits.
Just my time. So, so those houses that are on the bottom portion, they have 2 cars on the road, plus 1 in the garage. So if it's a first come, first served, they could actually apply and get a permit parking, and then they'll be all taken up unless the ones who don't have the ability to park in front of the street. If it's a first come, first served, that concerns me, that they could still lose out if everyone else on the street applies because it's first come, first served.
Right, when I say first come, first serve, it's exactly that. However, once all the permits are sold, we start examining who has a permit but really doesn't need it because they have parking on site. There's provisions in the bylaw to protect people that have no choice but to park on the street.
Okay.
Those permits will be canceled, exactly.
Okay, thank you, that's what I want to know.
Any further questions? If not, I do have questions. My first question to staff is that when was this development approved, and they said it was built, they moved in 2 years ago. When was this development approved?
Chairman, the rezoning report came to Scarborough Community Council in March of 2014 and on to Council on May of 2014. It was a rezoning and subdivision application.
Okay. So at that time, it was approved based on sufficient parking, and now it's not sufficient.
Mr. Chairman, my reading of the report at that time indicated that the plans were revised to accommodate a parking space in the front yard beyond the garage and not encroaching onto the public road. So what happened from that time to the construction of the units, I don't know. I don't have that information yet.
To transportation, what impact does it allowing permit parking on this street have on snow clearing operations?
The requirement for the bylaw is only one, which would be the parking in the garage itself. So it does meet the parking requirement, but normally we also ask for, as I was mentioning before, that buffer zone of 5.7 meters between the main front wall of the house and the property line, which would essentially give them
But if we allow permit parking, which is on the street, it will narrow the street down. And what impact will it have on snow clearing? The trucks coming around with the big blades?
Oh, this is a regular sized road. It's not a substandard road, so we would still be able to do winter maintenance clearing. Obviously, they will not be able to clear if there are vehicles parked there during the day.
So they could be plowed in then. That means the cars could be, the snow pushed against the side of the car, and they themselves will have to shovel themselves out, right?
Correct, very similar to other areas of the city.
Okay. And the next question I have, I'm not sure who's going to be able to answer it. I know a good number of developments whereby people are complaining they don't have enough parking, especially townhouses. Councillor Thompson had approached me. I have one coming up in my area where 80 townhouses are approved. You know, we are concerned that there is insufficient parking. So once we allow permit parking here, will it snowball? And other areas going to ask for permit parking on their streets as well?
I can try, Paul, if you want to jump in afterwards. This is a new development, and this was built, it looks like substandard. So this is a unique situation, in my opinion. When transportation looks at new developments, we're always asking for the bylaw requirement as a minimum. If a developer wants to get a minor variance to reduce their parking, that there is a committee of adjustment that will allow them to do that.
Okay.
So it's just based on whether or not they get approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would add in that in every rezoning application, there is a proposed parking amount proposed, and staff review that proposal and indicate whether we feel it's appropriate or not to accommodate the demands of the development. You know, in this particular project, it complies with the zoning requirement because everyone can put a car in a garage, so it's not a parking shortage situation per se. It's just that normally a front yard driveway can accommodate a car without encroaching. Again, what I'm reading in this report is that 64 of the dwellings were supposed to be able to accommodate a car in their driveway in the front yard without encroaching, although 22 actually would not comply with that requirement. So that was indicated at the time.
Okay, I just have one last question. Earlier, they asked whether permanent parking is allowed in the rest of Scarborough. I know of only 2 wards where there's some permit parking for old areas where the houses were built before the cars came about. So this is going to be the first permit parking, if it's allowed, outside Ward 35 and 36, right?
Councillor, this would be the second. There is already a street in Scarborough under the permit parking program in Ward 35.
There's none? There's one?
There's one street in Ward 35 that has permit parking already.
Okay. That's the old area.
Yeah, but that's what he said.
Okay. That's what I said, okay? There's one outside those two areas. This is the first one outside those two wards. Thank you.
That's the old part of Scarborough that thinks it lives in Toronto.
Yeah. The beaches.
Okay, finish questioning, nobody, second round, you want?
Yes, please.
To speak, okay. Councillor Kelly?
Do
please
parking
proceed.
permits restrict parking to one side of the street?
When permit parking is implemented on a street, it's normally implemented where parking is allowed. So if a street has one-sided parking, then permit parking is on that side of the street. If it's double-sided, then it would be double-sided. However, there is a review that's done before permit parking is actually implemented to ensure that a roadway is wide enough to accommodate double-sided parking and, for example, maintain two-way traffic flow. So if we have to, when permit parking is implemented, we may restrict parking to one side, so to allow residents to park and to allow for safe maneuvering of vehicles on the street.
I'm looking at the comments section in the report, and it looks as if it takes 5 steps to introduce permit parking on a street. You first have to have a petition that has 25% of the households, not the people, but the households signing it. The councillor has to agree. Is that correct? Is that how I read that?
We ask for concurrence from the area councillor, yes,
And if
after the petition is received.
And if it's a no, is there a veto there?
Yes, there is.
That's okay. And if the councillor agrees that the petition should be reviewed, there's a technical review. And does that review report to the community council, or does it report to city council?
It reports to community council, keeping in mind that permit parking is a delegated matter provided that there is no TTC on the street. So community council would have final say in that situation. As soon as there's TTC, then the staff report would go to community council and then to city council for final approval.
Well, I thank you for that clarification. So in this instance, there's no TTC on that street. So do we make the final decision here then?
If the bylaw were to be amended to allow receipt of a petition, if that was already approved and a petition was received, then yes, Scarborough Community Council would have final say.
I'm confused.
Let me try and, so what's before you today is to allow for this street to have the ability to have permit parking on it, provided there's a petition to the councillor. That's what's before you. That actually is not a delegated matter. It gets approved by city council. If that gets approved by city council, then delegated authority for Pringdale Gardens Circle, because it doesn't have TTC on it, would then become a delegated matter.
So what we're doing today is recommending to city council that this street be taken out of the excluded area.
Correct.
And the bylaw amended accordingly.
Correct.
And as soon as that happens, then that 4-step process ending in our decision here can then take place.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a new questioner on second round. Go ahead, Councillor Hart.
I'm not sure if this is a question of legal or not. Going through the process, so we do the survey of the local neighborhood. The local neighborhood wants the permit parking. It comes back through a process, and the local councillor, if I heard right, decides to say no and veto that process. What gives the local councillor the authority to say no? It's my understanding that councillors, in and of themselves, have basically no authority. Legal.
Well, what we're dealing with today is the threshold issue of changing the municipal code, potentially recommending that to council. The second stage, if it does get to that stage, there's a process that has been put in place for specific permit parking. And that, as you've heard, is a 4-stage process, and I can't speak to the authority of an individual councillor, but obviously that is something that has been developed in terms of policy for allowing permit parking.
Just as a follow-up question, it'd be an interest, I'm not requesting it formally, but it'd be an interesting thing, I think, for this community council to know the answer to that.
Nobody's answering that? Okay. You just...
I'm not sure if there's a specific answer that I can provide now. I don't know of any specific policy. I don't have that.
I'm not asking it for it now.
Okay, you're just making a comment, okay. Okay, and if you want a second round questions? To speak? Okay.
No, questions.
Question? Okay, go ahead, Councilor Kirby.
Development, when it was done, and this is a question of Mr. Zuliani, if the sidewalk was put up against the curb and there was no apron, would that have addressed that issue? Something like Beswick?
Mr. Chairman, the location of the sidewalk is determined by engineering construction services along with transportation services. I believe that it depends on snow plowing operations. Occasionally, sidewalks can be put to the curb, but when trucks are plowing snow, it dumps the snow on the sidewalk, and so it's an issue. So they have certain design parameters of when they can and will not do that. But in a situation like this, if the sidewalk was pushed to the curve, there wouldn't be an encroachment over a sidewalk, which would improve the pedestrian flow, but there would still be an encroachment over the municipal property.
But that would address that issue, the parking issue that we're discussing.
The parking would not encroach on top of a sidewalk. However, the land is still public property, part of the road allowance, so it would still be encroaching on the public boulevard, but it wouldn't encumber pedestrians.
Let me try this one more time, if I may. There's a development in my area, Beswick, that you're familiar with, I believe, and the sidewalk is right up against there's no apron, it's right up against the curb. If that was done in this instance, that would have addressed the problem that they have of being able to park on their driveway. Correct?
Again, it would allow the car to encroach on the public boulevard. However, the car wouldn't be sitting on top of the sidewalk. It doesn't change the location of private property line. It simply just moves the sidewalk closer to the road.
Mr. Giuliani, the picture that we're seeing there, we're seeing an apron. If that apron did not exist and the sidewalk was up against the sidewalk, would that have addressed the issue of being able to park on their own driveway?
Cars would be able to fit on the driveway without encroaching on a public sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Even planners.
Thank you. See, you're questioning chase them away.
Bored them to tears.
To speak, Councillor, thank you very much, students, for coming. Hope you learned a lot
None of them are going to become planners.
about parking. Question of staff, all right.
still get a ticket for parking on the right-of-way. And we have had, at this community council meeting, people appear who said, look it, I'm just parking on my sidewalk, on my driveway. But the portion of the driveway that and there are no sidewalks on the street. So what's going on? And the answer is the portion of the driveway that you're parking on is in the right-of-way, and that's the ticket. Right-of-way, you're parking on the right-of-way. So you could take the sidewalk out from where it is, move it closer to the curb, but if that car or any portion of it is overlapping on the right-of-way, you still get a ticket. And one last question to staff. It's been the experience of my office that parking enforcement is generally done on complaint. So if there are people in this neighborhood who are getting tickets, does that suggest that there are people on that street who are phoning in those complaints, which would be ironic?
Typically, yes. The enforcement is done by complaint basis only.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Bring it in to speak. Councillor DeBaymaker, is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be moving the staff recommendation. And I feel like I'm in university again, learning about planning, and I'm glad the students were here because I'm sure they got a good planning lesson and maybe a lesson for some of our other residents on when you do actually grant an exemption. There are no other streets in my ward that have permit parking. In fact, I'd say 99.9% of Scarborough doesn't allow it. But the history of this site, which was approved on my watch as myself as a local councillor, and I went over the plans with staff on this entire subdivision. I guess at one level it's a good lesson to us not to sell off school sites. This is the old Pringdale Garden School. The school board sold it off. I objected. The community objected. The school board said, well, if you want it, buy it. We couldn't buy it, and it got sold off to a developer, and this is what was built. And if I can ask if you can just I'll say go out a little bit instead of zoom in, zoom out. So you can see the, zoom out just a little bit more, you can sort of see this whole site is on the old rectangle that used to be the school site. And I guess in the Rubik's Cube of the planning regime, where you want to achieve several objectives, one of them is intensification. This is what we came up with. There is not a single person in the next abutting residential, Toronto community housing or apartment building areas are surrounding the site that objected to it. So overall I'm very happy with the development. The neighbors have moved in. It's a actually beautiful little pocket. And if you see the houses, the back-to-back townhouses in the center, the island, if you will, I don't know if we can zoom in there, just, you can see some of the cars. If you go, nope, the other way, perfect, right there. In that island, there actually is no sidewalk. And that was a discussion that I had with planning staff, because if you put the sidewalk on beside the curb, how do you shovel the snow? Because you're going to, when the snowplow comes down the street, you're going to put all the snowbank onto a sidewalk. And we're not supposed to do that. If you put it too close to the house, then there's nowhere for people to park. And if you put it in certain other areas, there wasn't actually enough room for us to plant trees on this site, because our forestry department says we need a certain square footage of space to plant trees, as well as the utilities and the gas pipeline and everything else. So I was able to meet with the residents back in June. I hope now they might understand why it's taken us about 6 months to get to this point. I've looked at every, I think, permutation and combination with staff, and I want to thank staff. We've gone over every single option, and I think we landed on this option as the best option, because it does mean that these residents will be able to park their cars legally. They're all good citizens. They've saved up their down payments. They've taken out mortgages. They're law-abiding citizens. They don't want to break the law. But while on paper they do have a parking space, and they do have a parking space in the garage, when I visited the site, the houses at the end, if you're actually parking your garage, none of us could drive out of that garage because the people are 2 feet or 3 feet from the edge of the wall of your garage when you're driving out. So even if you backed up into your garage, it's very difficult to see people. Most people don't back up into the garage. They drive in front first, and when they back up out of their garage in the morning, they don't know if there's kids running to school. I did look at the options, including removing the sidewalks. Our staff recommended against that because we need sidewalks and there are people walking to the bus stop and kids going to school. We looked at moving the sidewalk over, but again, there's a whole bunch of utilities under there that shouldn't be touched and can't be touched. So staff said to me, Councillor, we cannot move the sidewalk. So we are sort of stuck with a very unusual situation, which I think is reasonable to grant an exemption. I want the proof of residency. So again, when we talked about the permit parking program, just off this site, there are some very large Toronto community housing projects, and the residents there in my ward, I've been playing cat and mouse with them for 14 years. They park everywhere to avoid paying for parking at the TCHC complex. There are other buildings across the street on Danforth. Those residents as well, to avoid paying for parking, they park on everybody else's street except where they're supposed to park because they're trying to save money. So I wouldn't want to give an exemption and say anyone can park here. It doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to pay, because I can guarantee you this street would actually fill up pretty quickly with non-Pringdale Garden residents using it as a way to avoid paying for parking. So I think it's reasonable to say to the street, let's start this process, let's get the petition out there, let's have staff investigate it, figure out where the parking can be. My sense is this southern string road along there, along the Highland, a branch of the Highland Creek, is probably where we're going to allow most of the parking. And let the residents give proof of ID that they actually live there, that this is their vehicle. You only get one vehicle. The permit goes to that vehicle. You can't give it to 5 of your friends to try to get free parking. It's exclusive to your vehicle. I think the first come, first serve option is a reasonable option. I'm sure the residents who need it most will be first in line, and even if they aren't, like our staff said, if they're sold out, they'll look at who needs it and who doesn't. And I think that will solve the problem here. So again, I've looked at every possible combination. I think this is a fair and reasonable option for these residents.
Wrap up.
And this is why it's a one-street exemption. Thank you.
You have a question from Councillor Cavagianis, although staff recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. The questions that I have of the councillor is the following. Would he be amenable to allowing, for us to move in this process, but also allowing staff to see if they can come back with regulations from their book that allows the street to have an exemption, period? So the 3-hour bylaw does not exist. We can give them 6 months, for example.
I wouldn't be supportive of that because, again, I have talked to the residents, I have talked to staff. I don't want to give a blanket exemption just to anybody. I think that if you live on Pringdale Gardens, you should be able to park there with your permit, but if Mr. Shan next to you lives one street over, he shouldn't be able to sneak over to your street and take up your parking because he can park there for free.
This is a circuit,
Circle.
A circle, if I can say that. I hardly find that you're going to find a lot of people coming from outside the area to park in there. I'd say to you that
once it goes in on the right, you'll see all of those TCHC buildings, apartment buildings and townhouse complexes adjacent to the street.
Is that on the east side?
That's on the east side, yep. There's a walkway you can see from the road.
You have TCHC homes there.
Pardon me?
You do have TCHC homes there. This is why you're proposing this?
Well, it's not just the TCHC. There's a Toronto Community Housing Complex with a lot of people, a lot of vehicles who are notorious for parking illegally.
Thank you.
So my expectation...
I will leave it at your recommendation.
Okay,
Thank you
yeah.
for explaining.
My expectation is people from that building and the other buildings would park on that street and just
Fair
walk
enough.
into their
Okay, fair
units.
enough, Councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Crawford, you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, I'll support the recommendation from the councillor, primarily because this is an isolated situation, and it really affects some homeowners who just don't have the ability to park in their driveway. That's the main reason. I do have, in my ward, the opportunity. I have a number of exemptions on streets. Those are the old City of Toronto, I guess, beach east of Victoria Park. Streets that have the ability to do permit parking. And over the years, I have actually gone through the process with the residents on those streets to decide if they want permit parking or not. I get, and I'm sure you guys all get the phone calls about, getting tickets and wanting permit parking. It sounds like a great answer to a problem, but in fact, when you go, and my experience has been, is when you go through the process and sit down with a community meeting, go over the pros, go over the cons. Two of the streets I've done this, I've actually decided, you know what, I don't think I want permit parking. And they've made the decision not to do it. So even though it sounds on the outset, sounds like a great idea, we all want permit parking, it doesn't necessarily work. I mean, the pro, of course, is you get more spots, there's more opportunity, but there's cons, which is the cost of this. I mean, you have to have the permit costs, and sometimes people look at that going, well, if I'm getting 2 or 3 tickets, you know, a year or whatever, it's probably fine, but, you know, they're going to have to pay for this. And you can't always get a spot close to your house. You may have the permit, but you may be having to park way down the street, and there's only so many spots, and you will, in fact, you could have a car with a permit parking in front of your house almost 24 hours a day. Somebody could just be able to park overnight because you're allowed to do that, but you're also being able to park during the day for 12 hours. So you can, in fact, have a car parked, and you don't have the ability, because it's permit parking, to go anywhere else on your street. So there's a lot of cons to that. So, and that's why I'm not necessarily supportive of opening up this can of worms and allowing parking, permit parking all across Scarborough. But in this isolated incident, I think it does make sense. They're still going to have to go through the process. And I think when they have that community consultation with the entire street and they look at the pros and cons, I think some of the people, except for those ones who just do not have parking, I get that, but I think everybody else will look at this, and the challenge will be is trying to get that 50% of the people, because ultimately it has to be a certain percentage that agree to that. And it'll be interesting to see as the council goes through that process. I mean, I may go up there that night, and again, as I said, when they realize that, whoa, there's pros and cons, I don't think this is a slam dunk for them wanting to do that, but I think I'll support the process.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Shan, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also support the staff recommendation being put forward being moved by Councillor DeBeermaker. I think, you know, there are situations arising in Scarborough due to planning decisions and due to the kind of the population and the demographics of people moving in, the kind of sizes of the families and so on, that in certain cases we might have to look at unique needs and what happened. And this one is even further unique, complicated by a design question as to, you know, it still baffles me as to how this got kind of built. Where you have the driveway, which is actually not useful as a driveway in some ways to be able to park. So I think, you know, it's important for us to respond and be responsive and adaptive when situations like this come. So I'm more than happy to support this parking permit process to start so that we can actually support the residents who at the end of the day got left hanging because of things that were not totally under their control, and they decided to move in to get a home, buy a home, and invest into it and to bring family there, but now have to deal with this issue which wasn't completely in their control in some ways. So I'm more than happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll support this recommendation because it is so different, so unique. And I would remind my colleagues that we have had this debate on parking permits, I think, on several occasions, and we have decided not to extend that process into Scarborough. And one of the reasons for that is that, you know, in many of our communities, we're fighting rooming houses. And the fear is that if you introduced parking permits as a right across the city, across Scarborough, then you may inadvertently be facilitating the creation or the sustaining of rooming houses. So if that is important to you, that argument is important to you, and it's one that is going to shape the debate at City Hall in the next month or so, then I would continue to advise you to continue that policy. But in this instance, I think there's a reasonable argument for an exemption, and for that reason alone, I will support this recommendation, but I wouldn't want us to take this as a precedent that opens up all the streets of Scarborough. in the future.
Thank you. Any, Councilor Karygiannis?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to, I will be supporting the recommendation, rather, echoing the words of Councilor Kelly. This is a one-off. I think we have to be very careful on the road that we go down. Certainly, it was difficult. Different plans could have been made. The sidewalk would have come closer to the, without an apron. That would allow people to be parking on their driveways. And we have to account for mishaps, mistakes, unfortunate situation that are made, so I'll be supporting this. But I'm hard-pressed to agree with Councilor Kelly on his remarks. We don't want to go down that road, like, that we bring other streets, this one off. I would support it.
Any further speakers? If not, I'll have the last word. I hesitantly support staff recommendation and Council Deputy Maker because many standards are changing. And what I find is standards are applied downtown where a lot of people do not own cars anymore are imposed on our areas up here where it lacks transit. So a lot of people do own cars and they have a lot more people living. Average household downtown is 1 point something. Average household, number of people in the household up here is about 3 point something. So those 3 point something needs more than one car. But the standards that's imposed on planning is that we only need one parking spot per unit. So it becomes problematic. And even dealing with the condos, apartments that's been built. One unit, one parking spot per unit. You got a visitor coming, where are you going to park? So it's a problem. Even from planning, I'm thinking long range. I'm not even considering the rooming houses or whatever else, okay? I'm facing that situation now, where Councillor Thompson asked me and says he's got to deal with a problem where people have 2 parking spots, one in the garage and one in the driveway, and still do not have enough parking spots. But we approved it. And in my area, in my ward, which will become Councillor Kelly's, so after the next election, if OMB approves ward boundary realignment, I have 88 townhouses been built, been approved. And those people are going to have 3, 4, 5 cars. But we only allow 2. The plan is calling for 2. And if they do fill up the garage full of junk, or full of household goods, I wouldn't say junk, it will become more problematic. Anyways, having said that, and in one area that was developed, the people bought it and the developer told them, oh, there's no sidewalks on this road, so they can park 2 cars in tandem, just like you saw up there. And lo and behold, after it was built, there was a sidewalk on every side of the street. And people came to me and said, you got to remove the sidewalk. When we bought it, we were told no sidewalk.
You did?
Hmm?
You did?
No.
Good.
I went back to them and said, sorry, for the safety of the kids and for complete street designs, we cannot do that. Because then the city is liable if somebody's child gets hit. Yeah, so I had explained to them and take the hit, the anger that was, heaped at me. Anyways, we go forward and we will move this to council for a final decision. Thank you. So I now call for a vote. All those in favor of recommendation, all those opposed, seeing none, carried. Councillor Hart, you have a point of order?
Not yet, Chair.
Not yet? Okay. Okay. So we move to the next item. If we order it, if you ask for it, I'll ask for it. Okay, you want to do that? Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yes, Chair. SC 26.19, left turn prohibition, 61 Canmore Boulevard. I request that Community Council consider reordering to hear that item next. I have the principal of Morris Road Public School here to make a deputation along with 2 of his students. If Community Council would consider that, I would really appreciate it. The principal has been here all morning.
Sure. So I ask for, would we order it? Yes. It's quick anyways. Yes. Okay.
Is there any speakers?
Okay, you're moving to turn down, to not support. Okay.
On that right away, that would be terrific.
Is that,
All right.
is that okay with you?
There's a deputy,
there are
there's a
speakers.
deputy in the audience that would be delighted with that
Okay,
motion.
so they don't want to speak if we move this.
If we can move it as a quick item,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right, Councillor Kelly moves to not, to oppose council recommendation.
No, staff recommendation.
Okay, then we will take the vote to reorder it based on Councillor Hart's request to move this up, to move SC 19 up, SC 2619 ahead of the others so that principal can speak and get
We're
back.
doing, I'm a little confused, though. We're doing potentially a quick item, now you're back to this item. I'm just curious, are we not dealing with a potential quick item now, or is it not quick?
Councillor Kelly has asked for a quick release. Okay. You're right. I mean, let's deal with Councillor Hart's before we go to Councillor Kelly on the point of order.
I just thought it would facilitate matters
Okay.
to
All right,
deal
so,
with it as a quick
okay, I'm going to put it a vote first.
Point of order,
Okay,
Chair, point of order. I don't think we're clear. What Councillor Kelly's saying that there's people
Yes,
here.
I understood that's why I'm
I don't
moving
think
this
the rest
forward.
of us understand. So if we can make it clear, there's people here that will supportive of this, and if we move in what he's asking for, that would release the
The
item.
speakers do not speak, yes, I agree, okay? So Councillor Hart's request to move his item, ahead of some of the others, not Councillor Kelly, because Councillor Kelly has a, like a point of order as well.
Fine.
So are we in favor of moving it ahead? Any opposed? Seeing none, so now we come to Kelly's item of SC 26.9.
And the
And Councillor
deputy in
Kelly.
the audience is nodding approval, Speaker.
Yes. Hmm?
The deputy in the audience is nodding approval of my motion to vote against the staff recommendation.
Okay. The audience is not. So do you still want to move forward with it?
Yes, Jesus.
To a vote, a quick vote.
Okay, to put a vote, okay?
Mr.
Okay,
Just-
so Councillor Kelly
Just a
is,
point of order, please. I just want, and I agree with Councillor Kelly, and I've seen the nods, but can you just acknowledge that there are no deputants to this item at this point? They will say no. I just want to make sure procedurally we do it properly, so.
I agree, I agree.
Just ask if there's any deputants. They'll
Yeah.
probably say no, then we could do
The
this.
deputants that want to speak on this, are they okay with not speaking? Okay. So they are the two, okay. All right. So Councillor Kelly, yeah, they have agreed that they won't speak on this. So
Are there
then
any-
we
are
can
there
move
any other
Councillor Kelly,
deputants
a
to
quick
speak to
item
the item?
release.
I just want to make sure there's no other deputy, anybody here who's not on the list who wants to speak to it.
Okay, anybody else that wants to speak on this item in the audience? Nobody else wants to speak on this? Okay. So Councillor Kelly is moving not to allow staff recommendation. Okay, he's opposed to staff recommendation. So all those in favor of maintaining the current left turn, all those in favor? Councillor Kelly, Councillor Hart, Councillor Shen, Councillor Kavigianis, Councillor Ainsley, all those opposed? Councillor Lee.
Okay.
Why do you gotta be such a piss ass?
The motion carries that to maintain it what it is now.
We're now moving to...
And now we move to item SC 2619, left turn prohibition, 61 Canmore Boulevard. The speaker, Mr. Arif Natu, can you please come forward? He's the principal of Moorish Public School, which is close by.
Thank you, councillors. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking us early. I do have my two student presidents of our school. I have Khalees and Arun, who I would like, it's always nice to use this as an educational opportunity, and these two ambassadors for our school have been part of the school since they were in kindergarten, and they are now in grade 8, and they understand how important school safety is in and around our building. Even though we try to get our parents and our families to walk to school, increasingly more and more families are driving their students to school. And we do have a drop-off loop, as you can see in the diagram there, and that drop-off loop is getting more and more congested with parents and students, grandparents dropping their students to school. When a car coming out of that driveway loop is making a left turn, it starts to bottleneck that entire area, including Canmore Boulevard. And we end up having families, cars actually stopped on that road waiting for that car to turn left, and especially in the mornings, some drivers are a little bit anxious to get to work, so those that are not dropping their families to school try to bypass that congestion, and that leads to a lot of issues around that area. But I'm going to hand it over to our student ambassadors who will speak from firsthand experience about their experience around that area. Please.
Good morning, Honorable Council. As Student Council representatives, we would like to take the time to advocate for nothing more than the insurance of student safety and well-being while attending our school, Moorish Public School.
But there lies one obstacle in our path, which is the left turn allowed on Canmore Boulevard's intersection. Similar to other schools, safety is our #1 priority, and that's why we are here to advocate for a left turn prohibition sign.
The left turn at the intersection of Canmore Boulevard is a huge concern for the safety of our students. Every day, parents, students, staff, and even grandparents use the crosswalk at the intersection. And every day, their lives are put at danger due to bad driving and traffic. One of the reasons for this is the left turn. Before and after school, there is heavy congestion on our intersection caused by left turns made to enter the drop-off zone. These left turns interfere with the flow of traffic, causing a bottleneck. Now, all the cars have to wait for the left turn driver, creating a congestion. This congestion is a safety hazard.
There has even been instances of cars blocking the crosswalk and school buses not being able to enter. The left turn itself is a hazard. Reports show that when a driver makes a left turn, they have obstructed vision, inadequate surveillance, a misjudgment of speed and distance, and demand more mental and physical effort when performing one. In fact, federal data shows that 53.1% of crossing path crashes involve left turns. All of this, plus the factor that it is an early, busy weekday and drivers are in a rush to get to work. This leads to the tendency of aggressive driving and acceleration over the speed limit. The left turn at the intersection creates safety hazards, increases traffic tension, and disrupts learning.
As you can see from your diagram, when cars are exiting, most are tempted to go back this way, which is the left. The problem with this is that all the cars here are lined up waiting to cross, but the left turn interferes with doing this, as now all these cars have to wait, which not only causes congestion, but is now becoming a safety hazard. And if there was a miscommunication between the left turn driver and the other driver, it would unfortunately result in an accident.
With so many problems at the 61 Canmore Boulevard intersection, we have come up with one solution. That solution is the installment of a left turn prohibition sign. Yes, it may be inconvenient to some parents who make left turns, but there is more gain than loss. With this sign, we are ensuring the safety of pedestrians and the flow of traffic.
We strongly advocate for the installment of a left turn prohibition sign and believe it is our only solution. This sign would help us to eliminate the dangers altogether and lower the amount of congestion, increase efficiency, and last but not least, it would make our community safer. And that is exactly what we want. Thank you.
Thank you. You did very well.
Thank you.
Question? Councillor Hart?
First of all, I want to thank you for coming here today. I'm sure if any of the councillors weren't sure how they'd vote on this, that they're positive now. That was very, very convincing. I just have a question for the student reps. How would you go about encouraging more students to walk to school?
Well, I would start by encouraging them to take part in more sports and after-school activities, because then that would make them realize that going outside is fun for them and increase the amount of people who do walk to school.
Okay.
We also have a walk to school campaign where you get stickers if you walk to school throughout the week.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Scarborough Community Council, I don't know if any other councillors have anything to say. I want to thank all of you for coming. I think your principal's done a great job coming here today, and I hope this was a real learning experience for both of you. And maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, you'll be sitting in this horseshoe.
Okay, Councillor Kerry Janice.
I want to thank you for coming down and making the presentation. Certainly, it has moved us to what we need to do. My question is, was this your first time, or have you been practicing the speech?
Well, this is the first time we've been practicing together. We've done it online and once at a time, but when this is the first time we've done it together live.
I have a warning for you gentlemen on this side. We are being watched and challenged. Thank you for coming, and thanks to the principal for bringing the kids down.
Councillor Shan? Or do you want to speak? No questions. Any other questions? If no more questions, thank you very much. Well done. And to speak, Councillor Shan wanted to speak. Councillor Hart first, all right? You got to move the motion.
I'll just speak very briefly. I'd like to move the staff recommendations. And I was wondering which way I would go, but once the students spoke, that certainly convinced me.
Councillor Shan?
I just wanted to congratulate the students for doing this and being engaged in this process early in their lives, and looking forward to seeing them more often. But I also want to thank the principal. We need educators like you to bring students into these civic engagement processes early, and also want to note that we have noticed how fabulous the school community has been in terms of tragedies that have taken place, and in terms of dealing with issues that are confronting us. And congratulations, and thank you for your leadership in being actively involved in making sure the school space is safe, and the students are part of that solution and advocating for that solution.
I'll have the last word again. Thank you for coming down, and good thing you're supporting staff recommendation. I had one item whereby the students came to oppose the staff recommendation. And you know what? They convinced every councillor sitting on around this horseshoe. And they all voted against staff recommendation and got what they wanted. This was a traffic signal in front of the school. But that one was 2,000 over students that was crossing that road, all during school hours. So it was a good challenge. So thank you for coming down. This is good practice for you. And you're right, you could be sitting around this table in the future. So keep it up. Thank you. So on move staff recommendation, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Congratulations. Next item on our list. Okay, to remove it done. Let me get to the right point. 11 done. Next item 14? Okay. Okay, next item is SC 2614, parking prohibitions, Dunborough Way, Brookmill Boulevard, and Lamoureux Drive. We have a speaker, Noel D'Souza. Mr. D'Souza, please take a podium. You have 5 minutes to present, and then the councillors will have the opportunity to ask you questions. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and councillors. We've heard many proposals today with regards to parking for situations where there is a genuine need, where there is a safety issue, or there's a issue that is affecting residents in a great way, and there's a call from residents for a change. With respect to 2614, myself and some of my fellow residents who are here in attendance are really quite puzzled as to why these parking prohibitions are being proposed. We have not seen evidence that there is a need for these parking prohibitions, and having these prohibitions in place would greatly impact the residents of the streets in question. I'm a resident of Brookmill Boulevard. I'm at 126, which is approximately in the center of the area that is being proposed for a no parking from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we are really at a loss as to why these prohibitions are in place. I was first made aware of this proposal by our councillor, Mr. Kirigianis, via his newsletter, where he said there were some requests to address an issue with people coming to the nearby Scarborough Hospital Birchmount campus and who are parking on our street. Mr. Kirigianis went on to say that some residents would like to see portions of the street designated as a no parking zone. Now, I've had many communications with Mr. Kirigianis' office, and we've exchanged some information, we've exchanged some emails. I've taken several pictures which are also available, which are provided to city staff of the street in question. And from what I can see, these pictures were taken on various days at various times. And from what I can see, there is not a parking issue. There is not congestion on the street. There is not overcrowding. There is not a safety issue. There are some cars parked on the street because there is demand from residents. And I don't doubt that there are some cars parking on the street where people are walking to the nearby hospital, but it is not causing an issue. So many residents have emailed Scarborough Community Council noting their objection to these proposals. I also have sent to Scarborough Community Council a letter signed by 15 residents of the affected area opposing this proposal. So really, we don't understand why this is in place. The report for action that was presented makes some reference to a parking study without any further details. It also says that the residents were canvassed by Councillor Kirigianis. As far as I know, myself and many of my fellow residents have not had input into this process, and so we are really at a loss to understand why this is being proposed. I don't know if you have the pictures available for the council to see that I forwarded to the city of the street in question. That might give you a better understanding of the area of the street that we're talking about.
Thank you. And any questions of the deputant? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. D'Souza. We will now bring in any questions of staff. Seeing none, anybody to speak? Councillor Kirigianis.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move staff recommendations. I want to thank the staff for the hard work that they've done into this. This is an area where a lot of people are parking in order to go to the hospital, It has increased parking situation. It is at a curb and follows through right back. People are speeding through the area. We have had some reports of accidents that have been reported, and the situation is that we move from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's the time that people will come and park in order to go to the hospital, as well as there's other people that come and park in order to take the TTC on Birchmount and/or Finch. Thank you.
Staff recommend move. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Next item, SC 2616, held by Councillor Lee, Traffic Controls Review, Steeles Avenue East and Mountcastle Gate. Question to staff. Is this the only intersection coming up onto Steeles that does not have traffic signal between 404 and let's say all the way out to Markham Road? Is this the only intersection without the traffic signal?
You're talking about...
On this one here, between the DVP or rather 404 and Markham Road. What? I am. I'm asking the question. Oh. But I thought the chair can also have ability to ask questions. There's nobody right now, but anyways, I think we'll just... The vice chair is sitting in the chair's position now, okay?
Allow him to ask the question.
Okay, staff. This is my question to staff. Through the chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm answering on behalf of our acting director. Yes, it's my understanding that the question is that is this the only location that does not have traffic control signals on Steeles Avenue between Highway 404 and points east, let's say to Midland? And my recollection is, yes, this is probably the only unsignalized intersection.
Okay. All right. So I think, yes, and Councillor Kelly, go ahead. Yes. You have to speak, right? You want to move your motion? Yeah. Councillor Gavigiana, sorry. Councillor Gavigiana.
Okay, it's all right. You're just a little old.
I take check back, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Through you, I want to thank the staff for their work. I will be proposing the alternate... Sorry, where are we here? Yes, I would be proposing that we look at installing traffic lights at this intersection. East of the Don Valley to Midland and even a little farther, this is the only intersection coming out of a subdivision that has no signalized system. There's a lot of residents. There's about 1,800 homes. There's close to 3 apartment buildings of 300 apartments each that are affected. We also have there's a parking plaza there where the Casino Rama, the casino for the down at Niagara Falls Park, and sometimes they go up Wintermute and they turn out. So it is highly recommended, and I ask you please to support this recommendation. And thank staff for all their hard work.
Okay, Councillor Kavigianis is moved to authorize installation of traffic signals. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. And this goes down to City Council for final approval. And one last item, SC 2620, endorsement of events for liquor license purposes. We have DeWitt Lee as an applicant. Is DeWitt Lee here? No? Okay, Councillor Debate-Maker, you do have,
Yeah, I have a motion. I've worked with staff from several departments. It just says that for the one application to defer consideration of this item until such time that the organizers can confirm that they are in good standing with Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Division, Facilities Management Division, and Toronto Police Services in terms of payment of all outstanding fees.
okay. So Councillor Debate-Maker has moved a motion because this will be in your area, right? Okay. So all those in favor of this? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. This brings us to the end of our meeting and close to the end. So I have general bills. So Councillor Crawford, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw bills 1298 to 1303 prepared for the November 14, 2017 meeting 26 of Community Council.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaw? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Confirming bill. Councillor Inslee, you have a motion to introduce and enact confirming bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting number 26 on November 14th, 2017.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. And before we adjourn, I do have an announcement to make. Besides inviting everybody out here at lunchtime to look at the beautiful art that the children created. The announcement is that our city community council clerk, Terry Tabney, is leaving us after 1 year. I'm not sure whether it's enough of us, but anyways, he's moving on.